Tell me it's not true. Say it's just a storm.
Hello, good afternoon from Mickey and from me from Castle Gory. Mickey's been particularly entertaining and amusing this afternoon, aren't you, my darling girl? Mwah. And Mickey says, though, we are not to go into too much of a preamble because we have a lot of ground to cover. So Mickey says, Marty, plunge right in. So I'm going to take Mickey's advice and I'm going to plunge right in. Okay? But before doing the questions, may I say that I thought the statue was, and I now speak as somebody who studied art for 11 years and started life as an artist. I thought it was competent. I do not think that the sculptor Ian Rank Broadley should be criticised too unduly, because it does have a likeness. Sorry, Mickey's fur is by my nose. Poor baby girl, sorry. And I think, though, he made some fundamental errors. I would have preferred to see a sculptress like Shenda Amery, who has done wonderful sculptures of people like Margaret Thatcher, Cherie Blair, the late Earl of Bessborough, to mention but three. Wonderful sculptress, and she has a lighter touch. Very good on resemblance, but a lighter touch. I think it does look like Diana, and I think, in fairness to the sculptor, bronze is a very heavy medium. So bronze isn't going to have much levity. Had he wanted lightness, he should have opted for marble, white marble, which of course is what Princess Louise, Duchess of Argyll, did with that wonderful statue of Queen Victoria that is outside of Kensington Palace. So, I mean, it can be done, and it can be done very well. I think it was the wrong medium from the point of view of keeping it light. And Diana had a great degree of lightness about her. She also had an aura of being light, which is a slightly different thing. None of this comes across, and none of this would be able to come across because of the medium he has chosen. I think we need to remember that. I think he made two fundamental errors which absolutely militate against the sculpture actually being admired beyond what competence would require it to be. The hair is wrong. The hair should not be so flat and like a wig worn by a Hasidic woman, because that's what that hairstyle looks like. It looks like the wigs that the Hasidic women wear. Very big mistake. Diana's hair was never quite like that. It always had a lightness to it. And he could have made it more bouffant. That's what he could have done, and that's what he should have done. That immediately would have elevated things. His other fundamental error, and I am amazed that a professional sculptor would make an error like this. is the outfit that he chose. It breaks up the body. It crunches it up. And that belt, I mean, sorry, even in a painting, it would have been all wrong. He should have had something that glided over her body. That's what he should have done. I mean, he clearly hasn't been looking at Hellenic and ancient Roman sculptures, and maybe he would have profited from looking at them. Putting that aside, I thought it was competently executed, and I know I'm damning it with faint praise, but I don't think I can stretch to more than that, I'm afraid. I do not agree with some of the comments that it's absolutely appalling, and I do think he has caught something of the resemblance. What people do not understand is a living human being or a photograph that's well done of a living human being lightens the human being. Makeup, hairdos, hair dye, lighting, favourable lighting, all of that lightens the mood and the presentation. Strip all of that back and you get a much heavier, more morose picture. I do not agree with people who say that she should have been smiling. Good portraits never have anybody smiling. It's one of the rules of thumb of portraiture. The nearest you should ever get to a smile is the slight hint of a smile in the Mona Lisa. I think it would have been grotesque to have her smiling. What else can I say? Diana presented herself as being very long and lean. She was very long. She wasn't that lean. She had a boxy figure. There are no two ways about it. She had a very boxy figure. And this is showing up rather too realistically. He should have exercised a bit of artistic license. I don't agree that her legs look awful. Diana had good legs, and good legs are not chicken feet like Meghan Markle has. Good legs are calves that graduate down to reasonably slender ankles. And I think he's captured that. So that's my take on it. I'm sorry, Mickey's fur is bothering me. I hope I've got rid of it. Well, you notice that Harry bolted very shortly after. But we will get to that because I'll plunge in with the questions now. Maura of Pettifuss says, Lady C, don't you agree that it was so very nice of Meghan to donate her green hornet dress and cape to cover that unfortunate Diana statue? I'm sorry, I have to laugh. That is too funny for words. Yes, it was very, very kind of Meghan to donate the hornet dress and cape. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And yes, it does look as if it was donated, doesn't it? So, Molly M says, to be a little bit more on the serious side, it was so disrespectful of Harry in his so casual stance, jacket flowing open and calling through his cupped hands. He had to make it all about him again. Well, I think the contrast between William's demeanour and Harry's demeanour is the contrast between, as Harry would have put it, the paths they're on. Harry is shaping up to be a clown, a court jester. He always had that slight aspect to his personality, which was very appealing, but it's not appealing anymore. It really is not at all appealing, because he, first of all, there's an old rule of thumb, and I'm sure Harry knows it only too well. But of course, Harry has taken a leaf out of Meghan's book, and she snares at tradition. And even in my book, I go into the fact that they were always snaring at tradition, even when they were in England, and that people found it really offensive. Well, there's an old rule of thumb: no brown in town. No gentleman wears brown shoes in town unless he is totally dressed down. And nowadays you can just about get away with wearing brown in town. But even 20 years ago, no gentleman would ever be seen wearing brown in town. I'm pretty sure Harry knows that. And I'm pretty sure that this was his Margaret Thatcher victory sign to everybody, that he's above all the rules and the regulations and the guidelines and the traditions, and if you don't like it, just take the Margaret Thatcher victory sign and do with it what he wants you to do with it. He looked inelegant, which he was. He looked unkempt, which he basically was. William, by contrast, was impeccable. But we will get not only to the demeanour, but also to what the significance of the clothing was in terms of character. So I don't want to jump the gun too much. But what I will say while it occurs to me is that it is very interesting. This statue was commissioned in 2017. Harry and William have been working on it closely with the sculptor. It is really interesting, in my opinion, that Harry would accuse his family of racism, but William and Harry both agreed to have somebody of colour in the statue. How racist is that? I mean, is that the sign of a racist family, that they're going to have a young man of colour in the statue that is there for all of posterity? I mean, the very statue itself is a refutation of the lie that the royal family is or was racist, because there are letters that Queen Victoria wrote instructing that the household treat people of colour and people who were not of the same class as the courtiers and the aristocracy with the degree of respect and decorum that they would have treated anybody else. Queen Victoria wrote that in the middle of the 19th century. Queen Victoria had a foster daughter who was black. The Munshi, who was her great darling, was Muslim from India. I just throw all of that out for good measure, because I think a little bit of proportion, shall we say, will actually show what utter rubbish and the dregs that Harry and Meghan have been scraping up, because it really is the dregs. Linda Henderson says, Harry looked like a 13-year-old on a lark. The unveiling was a dignified occasion. He embarrassed himself. He appeared very immature. Look at me, I'm a nice guy. You have proved otherwise, sir. I am reading that out, and I'm reading one or two other comments out, because I want the people to speak, and I want to be the messenger and the conveyor of what they are saying. I agree with all of that. I think Harry's performance was very discomforting. I thought he was very uncomfortable. You see, Harry's not a total sociopath. Meghan, of course, would have sailed in, the picture of comfort and cool, and beaming beatifically and smiling with that smug little smile. I know better than you. I'm better than you. I know better than you. My secret is I'm superior. You're just so inferior. Harry has scruples and a conscience. You know one of the ways of telling a sociopath? You can't pick up the join. There is no join. A neurotic, somebody who has a conscience, they will give you a message that they unconsciously, of course, usually, but that they are lying, or that they are trying to con you, or that they're trying to deceive you, or that they are uncomfortable with their situation because of X, Y, Z, A, B, and C. You pick up the subliminal messages that people with a conscience and scruples unconsciously and automatically convey through their ordinary demeanour. Harry was obviously very uncomfortable. A sociopath does not have a conscience, doesn't have scruples, and does not convey the message unconsciously that something is amiss, because as far as they're concerned, nothing is amiss. They're embarked on their con, and they're perfectly justified in doing it. Harry, you could tell, was acutely uncomfortable. Harry knows he has blotted his copy, and if you looked at the body language between Harry and William, and then Harry and everybody else, they were all dignified, they were all natural, they were all very keen for the event to go off with grace and dignity. One or two people, for instance, Julius Samuel, greeted Harry warmly, as did his aunts. His Uncle Charles looked a little bit sheepish. And William, you could see, and this I have been told is an accurate observation, that William has been so wounded by Harry's betrayal and understands so completely what Harry is about, and that Harry was trying to set him up to present the fake message of a rapprochement. Oh, everything is all right again. Then 3 weeks later, there would have been something else. So, more headline grabbing. William deflected beautifully. And I could see it because, of course, I've been in situations like that with people where you are very measured and you just make sure you don't engage 1 millisecond longer or 1 millimeter more than you have to. And you could see William doing it time and time again. And I understand that my observation was absolutely accurate. There is no rapprochement between the two of them. If there ever is one, it's going to take a very long time for William to trust him ever again, and will never trust him completely. He has been seriously wounded, very betrayed, and feels it acutely, I am made to understand. And that is why, evidently, Harry didn't stick around. It was a very uncomfortable experience for Harry, because Harry was Judas in the Jesus camp. That's what he was, and he knows it. He knows everybody thinks he's a Judas, and he knows no matter what self-justification he comes up with, it's never going to cut the mustard with the people with whom he was in attendance for the unveiling of that statue. They may make excuses for him. They may understand why he did what he did, but they're never going to regard it as acceptable or justifiable, and he knows it. Before moving on, I also ought to say that, yes, his hail fellow, well-met sort of cheeky, chappy, sort of jokey was very inappropriate. But he'd obviously been told by Meghan, big smiles, and always look for the camera, big smiles. And he's obedient. The puppy dog knows how to wag its tail so that mama dog will feed it when it's hungry. And big smiles, and gesticulation so the camera will pick up the fact that he's there. So inappropriate, so undignified. Carol Hawthorne says, William looked great today. He looked immaculate. His suit was beautiful. On the other hand, Has looked terrible. His suit was crumpled, a bad fit, and brown shoes in big block capitals. Say no more. Well, I'm reading it out because these are my sentiments exactly. Harry didn't only let himself down, he let his mother down. It was an occasion to unveil a statue to his mother. And his mother dressed appropriately. She pushed the boundaries a little bit sometimes, for instance, not wearing tights to Ascot. But she never dressed in a tacky, lower ordered, I'm trying to struggle to find a word that's not going to offend people, in a totally inelegant way. She never dressed like that. Harry knows better, but he was giving a message, and we got the message loud and clear. What he doesn't realize, though, is he was also letting his mother down. I mean, really. Brown shoes in town. Adjua Akins, who is black, and I'm saying that because it is important that with all of these accusations of racism that Meghan has been trying to get out there, even in the last few weeks, that we show that many black people, in fact, I suspect the majority of black people, are on to her. She says, then we have articles coming out stating that Meghan pleaded to Harry to keep the peace with his brother at the statue unveiling. Of course, my dear, Sunshine Sacks and Meghan and Harry's people earn their money. They're being paid a lot and they've got to earn it. And if they don't keep them in the news, they're not going to be able to spin deals with other people. So, you know, there's a commercial operativeness to all of this as well. Sorry for interrupting. She started the whole mess in the first place. Typical Meghan, takes no accountability. Well, why would she need to take accountability? She's perfect. Everybody else is imperfect. She doesn't need to take accountability. You know, if she says it's so, it's so. She doesn't need to take accountability. I think it's beastly of all of us to expect Meghan to take accountability. But fun and joke aside, of course, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's actually almost outrageous that this woman would create the whole scenario, then try to present herself as a peacemaker. It's rather like Adolf Hitler deciding that he was going to propose himself for the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, and approached the Czechs and the Poles to back him up. I mean, whatever next? Sheila Winnard, who's also black, says, while I'm absolutely on Team Cambridge, I couldn't help feeling sorry for Harry today, seeing him at the unveiling of the statue to his mom. The video of Harry visiting his kids' patronage and seeing him genuinely looking like the old Harry we knew before his marriage, his presence at the unveiling, being around family who truly loves him, should hopefully make him reflective of the physical and emotional prison his wife has remanded him to. I hope he wakes up. Well, I hope he wakes up too. But I don't know that he will. Nobody knows that he will. Certainly, his conduct is not that of somebody who is winding down from his addiction to her. Let me put it that way. I thought he was embarrassingly dreadful, as I've said. I thought he was over the top, trying to, I'm going to give out the message that I'm a cheeky chappy and a happy bunny. He's as bad an actor as Meghan is an actress. Carol Horan says, Harry seemed to be happy, engaged and sincere at the charity event. Not at all trapped, quote unquote. I think he was feeling a bit nostalgic. So sad to see what has happened with his life. Yet it is sad. It's very sad to see what has happened with his life. But it's happened. And in life we have a choice. And if we are on a destructive path, we can do something about it. We need to accept personal responsibility for our choices and our destiny. But yes, at those children's awards the other day, he was very much, my nose is still bothering me because of Mickey's fur. It's floating around. I shouldn't have nuzzled to the extent that I did. Harry was very much much the way he used to be. And by and large, he was, as Amanda Holden said, wonderful. He gave time to all of the children and all of the families. He engaged with each of them. But, and this is where we come to the rub, and this is why Harry is in Montecito with Meghan, because Sonia Dawn Donahue says, apparently there was a very upset mother at the event Harry went to. He was speaking to a young girl in a wheelchair. She asked him if he had a photograph of Lili that she could see. He got up and walked away, and she doesn't say it, but several other people said he turned puce, he turned red in the face, he was absolutely furious and immediately shot up like a dart and marched off. So, to put it in its correct context, he got up and walked away to chat to others and didn't even answer her. I gather that it was rather more urgent than that he was furious and couldn't mask his fury and was just outrageously rude and offensive to the child. I mean, the child is a perfectly innocent child. I mean, you know, he really needs to get a grip where his rage is concerned. He could have politely said, I am sorry, I don't have one with me. Yes, he could have, and he should have. But just to walk away and say nothing, and worse, to make it clear that he was absolutely furious, yes, it's outrageous behavior. And it shows the extent to which Harry needs to get a grip. I mean, more than that, I don't think needs to be said. It really does show that he is not in complete command of his faculties, and he needs to get a grip. He needs more treatment. He needs different treatment. But it was wonderful to see the old Harry, even if that poor unfortunate girl who asked a simple question also got the new Harry. Kerry S. says, Lady C, I'm sure it didn't come as a surprise to see Meghan's attempts at making the news today, nearly at the precise time of the unveiling, with a report of her mourning in private from her home in Montecito, the death of her uncle Mike Markle. How transparently pathetic. Do you think this move had a dual NARC games purpose? To try and insert herself in the news the day of the emotional Diana tribute, and to spin out a very public guilt trip for has-been, as she is all alone, wiping away her crocodile tears, mourning the loss of dear, dear Uncle Mike, who was obviously so special. He wasn't even invited to her wedding. Well spotted. The same Uncle Mike who arranged for her to go to Argentina after she was expelled from Northwestern University for hazing. Well, you say that. I'm not going to verify that. As part of her all-white sorority, like all textbook narcs, she can't stand being out of the spotlight. Well, that is true enough. I have to say, I know from my experience with my mother that as soon as the spotlight shone on anybody else, it triggered her fury. And I hate to say, but Meghan, I think, is the same. And you know, it was really rather pathetic that she actually thought that she could actually make an announcement about her Uncle Mike's death, who she didn't even ask to her wedding, who said he expected an invitation to her wedding, who got her the internship in Argentina, and who always got along with her. And she didn't even condescend to ask him to the wedding. She has not been in touch with him for years, but she's devastated. How can she be devastated by the death of somebody she was indifferent to when he was alive? And now he's dead. She's going to use it for her purposes, but that's typical narcissistic behavior. And I'm going to tell you how I know it's typical narcissistic behavior. When my brother was dying, I convinced him, against his better judgment, to allow me to ring up Mummy to ask her to come if she wanted to come to see him, because he was only going to last another week or two, and we knew it. He didn't want her. He said he didn't want all the emotional turmoil that she would bring in her wake. I said, well, you know, Mickey, she's your mother, and I talked him into it, and he consented. I phoned her up. She had just come back from a party in America. And I said what I had to say then. But I didn't say that Mickey consented reluctantly. I said, Mickey would like to see you before he dies. And her response was, I'm sorry, I can't leave your father alone at a time like this. I said, what are you talking about? You were back from America. You were away for a party. Oh, that was for that, but for this, no, I absolutely can't go. I can't. Absolutely not. I'm not leaving your father alone at a time like this. He said, Gloria, it's perfectly okay. I will be fine. Go and say goodbye to Mickey. Absolutely not, she said, and there's no discussion about it. Well, I gave her a rocket the like of which you will not believe. It's actually all in the book Daughter of Narcissus, the whole exchange. I was so furious with her, and I told her off, up, down, and around. When he died, she didn't shed a tear. When his ashes were being scattered, he had requested that she scatter his ashes because she had given birth to him. She handed the urn to my little sister Margaret, and she said, you and Georgie can do this in front of everybody, which we did. Then, a few months later, she was in the mood to be the grieving mother and tried to pull her, oh, Mickey this, Mickey that. I said to her, Mummy, cut it. I said, I'm not listening to this. I said, I could remind you of a thing or two, and I'm not going to do it. The point I'm making is narcissists will use the death of someone to completely calibrate the relationship and reform it and remember. And Mickey, who did not particularly like Mummy, and Mummy, who when I was 18 years old told me that she'd hated Mickey from the moment he was born. Actually, she said she hated him from before he was born. She all of a sudden had this wonderful, close and marvelous relationship with her only son. So I can well see Meghan being devastated because there's mileage to be gained out of the death of a man she didn't care about when he was living, she treated abominably, because there is really nothing worse than icing someone who has been kind to you. And now that he's dead, she's devastated. Harry, if you believe that, you really are a member of the Flat Earth Society, and you're dumber than even I think you are. And I think you're really pretty dumb. Leslie Hogg says, you will of course have heard how devastated it feels over her uncle's death. Hilarious. How authentic. Yes, it is authentic. She is authentically grieving for a man she didn't care about. It is yet another Norma Desmond moment. Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up. H. 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 I'm so glad you've come back, but not with your awful racist family to console me. Now that Uncle Mike is dead, how am I going to manage, H? How am I going to manage? Please, H. I mean, if it wasn't for you, I think I'd top myself, H. I'm so grief-stricken. I'm going to be subsumed in a morass of grief, H. Please. Oh. And you notice I haven't shed a tear. And I'm not even an actress. But anybody who knows anything about human nature after a certain age can act up a storm in certain ways like that, if they want to. And I'm pretty damn sure that's what she's doing, and she's done it all her life. By her own admission, she can cry at the drop of a hat, whether she feels sad or not. NV says, Meghan's uncle has died. He was living in a trailer park. Considering how much money she has spent on dresses and baby showers, you'd think she would have done a little for him. Well, I'm sure you would have done something for him, and I would have done something for him. I think it is inexcusable for members of a family to know that other members of a family, especially those who have been kind to them, but even those who have not been kind to them, would have the temerity to spend millions on clothes, and she has spent millions on clothes while she was in the British royal family as a working royal. Meghan Markle spent more for clothes than every single other European princess, duchess, and queen put together. But she couldn't give her uncle 50 or 100,000, or her father. In my opinion, somebody who is so cold and callous, selfish, self-centered, and unfamiliar in terms of what familial responsibilities are, is no good. I think they are no good. And if she thinks that I'm defaming her unjustly, let her prove to the contrary, or maybe she can sue me. Of course, an absolute defense against defamation is speaking the truth. So maybe we're not going to get a writ quite yet. Ma Rubio says, Dear Lady C, I nearly fell off the chair laughing when I read in Hello magazine, Harry flies back to LA to comfort wife Meghan after sad family passing. Yeah. You mean the uncle she didn't invite to her wedding? The uncle she cut off? Please give me a break. But she should consider talking to her father. He might be next. I think he most likely will be next. But the problem with the Meghans of this world, they have had so many resculpturings of the clay, and they have so altered the reality of the original sculpture that it bears no resemblance to what it used to. I think we are really looking at true sickness, and it's repellent. And there's a reason why this sort of thing is repellent, because it is so anti-life. It is so undesirable. It is so the antithesis of everything that a human being should be and that life should truly be about. Bridget Wicks says, Meghan is very quiet at the moment. What do you think she is doing? Has she run out of star power with people realizing she is simply not a star? Bridget Wicks, you're a naughty, naughty person. Naughty. Meghan is a star. She thinks, however, she's Venus, but she's actually Uranus. She is a star. Uranus is a star. And Meghan is Uranus. Why is she so quiet? Well, she did try to bob into life the other day about poor Uncle Mike. Uncle Mike has died and deserted, and everybody knows I loved Uncle Mike so much. Crikey. I tell you, talk about a practiced phony. Unbelievable. But she and Harry are a brand. They are a duo. He's in the news. She doesn't need to be in the news, except, of course, on Thursday in terms of the statue, when she couldn't resist it. She had to let everybody know how devastated she was by her Uncle Mike's death, the Uncle Mike she hasn't seen for years. Doubtless, Lady Macbeth, Goneril, Regan, Iago, they are all alive, well, kicking in Meghan's little head in Montecito, coming up with new plans, plots, schemes, machinations, manoeuvres, and Machiavellianisms. I think we only need to wait to see what next she's going to dish up for us, or to call her by her truly starry name. Let's see what Uranus is going to dish up for us next. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and keep the questions coming in. And for those of you who don't know, put them in the comments section and they will reach me. Thank you very much and goodbye.